Hello, this is a shorter version of the reflection on Dr. Barbara Oakley's presentation on effective learning, practical insights from neuroscience, and I will also add a few things from learning, things that I learned from her Coursera online course. Today we will be talking about learning and thinking about thinking. And before we talk about this, let's think about talk for a minute about neurons. And neurons is the building block of the brain. The brain consists of 86 billion neurons, and each neuron has more than 1,000 connections. And when you learn something new, the neurons, the synapses, the connections of the neurons try to make synapses, connect the synapses between the neurons, and this is how the brain construct information and store the information that you read about and that you learn. Uh, this is very important, and it's important to learn that the brain from time to time tries to get rid of the old information and replace them with new information. Uh, the most powerful technique to learn effectively is to study or reread the material over and over, understand them, and retrieve the material and create your own language out of what you learned or your own context. One of the most important part of this is retrieval. Why? Because the brain trying to get rid of the old learning, old things that you have learned, and replace them with the new things you are learning. Uh, uh, happens continuously, and uh, practice strengthens the information that you learned and keeps strengthen the synapses and the new connections and make them difficult to lose. So retrieval is very important. One of the things that help us to retrieve information is to take breaks, and also sleep is very important. And it is recommended that you focus on reading and retrieving the things that you need to learn, the new, especially if it's new information, right before you sleep. And because when you are sleeping, the brain is still working, and more learning is happening subconsciously when you are when you are sleeping, sorry, or when you are taking breaks between studying periods. And this is called space repetition. So you study, you take a break, and then you study again, and so on. This information we're talking about is very important to give to students before the course and during the course and all over the course, and remind them of those strategies that we are talking about today. So that process of being in the focus mode, studying something, and after you study, you put yourself in a diffused mode is very important for the brain to process the information and to retrieve information. It is very recommended that when you are in the diffused mode, you don't engage yourself in another task, because if you do that, you are putting yourself in another focused mode, and this will make you, this will can erase what you learned in the previous focused mode. Uh, Dr. Barbara Oakley talked about also about procrastination, because it's a big challenge when it comes to learning a foreign language. And in procrastination, the brain, uh, a particular part of the brain called insular cortex is activated when you try to push things aside, and when you procrastinate, and you don't want to study or do the job you are doing. But unfortunately, this creates unhappy feeling, and that unhappy feeling causes the release of cortisone in the blood, which is bad for learning. The opposite of that is dopamine, because they call it the feel good molecule, and it is wonderful and powerful for learning. And it happens when students receive unexpected awards and when they get excited. So it's our job as teachers to not only motivate students but keep them engaged and excited, and also give them awards from time to time to encourage them to continue learning. One of the techniques that Dr. Barbara Oakley gave to deal with procrastination is Pomodoro technique. Basically, turn off all distractions, set up a timer for 25 minutes to keep yourself in the focused mode, and keep focused in a way that you bring your attention back if you lose attention, or if your mind zooms out. And after that, give yourself a reward of 5 minutes in relaxation, because the brain still learn when you are sleeping, when you are taking shower, and when you are listening to a piece of music that you prefer. But the recommendation here is it is recommended that not engage yourself in another task, because uh, uh, this will make your brain erase what you have learned. It is important also to think about the working memory versus the long-term memory, because in working memory, uh, you remember what you have just learned a few minutes ago, but in the long-term memory, you are practicing, and you are trying to move the things from the short-term memory, which is the working memory, to move that information to the long-term memory. And an example of that can be driving a car. It becomes difficult in the beginning, and you forget what you learn, but later on, by deliberate practice, it becomes second nature. So it takes time, and it's a process. That's why it's important to understand the difference between declarative knowledge, or the declarative learning, and procedural learning. Because in declarative learning, you learn immediately from somebody explaining something to you, like what I'm doing now. But the procedural learning, when you take this information and you keep practicing until it becomes a second nature, which requires time and effort. Uh, so my question now is, how can we apply those concepts that I am presenting today in our faculty development field? How to benefit from that as FD specialist, as emergent specialist, as an academic specialist, and how to benefit from this also as as a teacher of foreign languages. When we meet, we will talk more about how to apply those concepts in our workplace. Thank you very much, and see you later.